Hello and welcome, bookworms. Welcome to this week's episode of The Content Narrative. We are looking at Red and Dead by Violet Fenn. So this is book one in Netherweird Chronicles. So I don't tend to read much on my Kindle. I really should use my Kindle a lot more and put a lot more books on there. But so this is book one, and it is a very it's sort of like, because obviously I have reviewed what's it called? Ben Aronovich's Rivers of London. I've reviewed that in the past and I love that book series. And I kind of like when the supernatural meets sort of like a modern world. And I find it quite interesting. So essentially the premise of this is you've got your main character and she disturbs someone one night and she gets pushed off a balcony and she dies. But her body decides, nah, we're going to keep on living. So she basically becomes like the undead, a revenant. And so she gets up and she just carries on with her day. Just carries on. You know, she feels a little bit off, but you know, she just amounts that to I've fallen off a balcony. And then as she sort of like starts to come to terms with the fact that she is dead, she tells her best friend about it, and she runs a cafe as well. And then she finds out that there's loads of revenants around. You know, there are some that are centuries old. You know, she can now see ghosts. She can now see the ghost of her aunt, of her great aunt, sorry, who disappeared years and years and years ago. And now obviously she knows what happened to her. And it's so funny because it's her with her modern sort of like female energy, as it were. I don't want to say feminism, but it's her with her female energy, modern female energy, coming into this world of guys that have been around for thousands of years and everything. And it's set in Liverpool as well, which I found hilarious because I love it when it's set somewhere that I know. So when I'm reading it, I go, I recognise that. But essentially, it's setting up a series, and I think it's just a trilogy. So I'm definitely going to be reading the second one. But it's really, really good because it sets up these characters, but not in a, and you know how I feel about like the first book just being a world building one. So essentially it sets up these characters and it sets up enough of them so you can get their backstory without it being pages and pages and pages. I'm invested in all of the characters. I'm sort of like, I love the fact that, because I know that sometimes with females in books, sometimes I can get annoyed because they're written as being unstoppable, unbreakable, they can do whatever. And technically, because she's undead, she is unstoppable and unbreakable. But she still has flaws, but not like, again, the cliche with flaws is like, oh yeah, she sleeps around, or she's a heavy drinker, or you know, she doesn't have time for. And I'm just like, when it's with men, it seems to work, but when it's with women, it's like the way they do it makes it seem like, okay, like why are you making this so much worse? Because with men it never seems to be so much of a flaw. But I digress. But she's got flaws, and she's quite stubborn and she's quite boneheaded. But she also has a passion for history as well, which helps her in a couple of the situations. And it's basically just her kind of coming to terms with who she is, navigating this world. And quite early on as well, she just kills someone. And I applauded her because the guy was an absolute creep and was definitely going to be doing something he should not have been doing. And she just kills him, and I'm like, okay. And her friend is like super supportive as well. She's like, look, just don't eat me, zombie girl. And I'm just like, I freaking love that. Because one of my favorite, like one of the TV series that I absolutely adore is iZombie. And it's a very similar thing where it's like she becomes a zombie, but she functions as a normal person. And I honestly am going to be getting the rest of the series because I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I was just sat there and I was so invested in the characters and I loved it. And I mean, there's a scene with the birds of Liverpool as well. And I was just like, oh, I can see it in my mind's eye. And honestly, everything about it is so well written. That I literally, like, I started reading it. And I don't know why, but I read quicker on a Kindle anyway. I think it's just because it's a lot easier and you're not holding a book open. Books will always have a special place in my heart, but on the Kindle, you know, digital version. But like, honestly, I was reading it and I was like, oh, it's the end. And I was like, well, no, because I was on the cruise when I was reading it. And so I got really upset because I couldn't download the next one. So 100% now that I filmed these videos, the next one is being downloaded and I will be reading it. But I would definitely say 100% go out and read this book. So it's Red and Dead. Red is in RED because that's sort of like what a nickname is. But yeah, if you like this book and if you want to read the rest of the trilogy, please go ahead. If you like this book, you will more than likely love Rivers of London as well. It's got a very similar sort of like modernist vibe to it, and I love it. So 100% go check this out and let me know what you think below in the comments. Now, honestly, I say this pretty much every single video, but if there are any book recommendations that you'd like me to do, as I said, I do have an ever-growing list of to read books, and I know that you guys will appreciate that sometimes you're just not in a mood for a book, so you kind of go through, you know, fits and bursts of what you're reading. But 100% I would say, you know, give this book a read, but also tell me if there's any books that you think I should be reading. But thank you so much for your continued support, and remember to always keep it contento.